Yes. All right, Congresswoman, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Nolan Wells investigation. Some people feel like it's racially motivated. What do you think?
I mean, I think that specifically as Black Americans in the United States right now, we are always going to question whether or not there is a racial motivation, but also, if you know the history of Mississippi, I think that you'd have to be blind not to question potentially what is happening, especially in the case of an 18-year-old who ends up deceased without his cell phone, without any communication whatsoever with anybody, prior to ending up deceased, and he was out with his Caucasian friends, and then law enforcement tells everybody there's no foul play to be suspected. Now, a blind man could see that there's something to investigate, and so I want to applaud the legal team, Ben Crump and his team, as well as his parents, for not giving up and accepting no as an answer.
Well, it sounds like you think it is racially motivated.
I absolutely think that, I can tell you that we don't have any answers, but if you think that race is not something to look at, then you are not really trying to investigate.
So what do you think?
Well, I mean, you know me. I'm a civil rights lawyer. I mean, I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at the fact that these white kids deleted their social media accounts. It's not like they sat down and talked to law enforcement. It's not even like law enforcement decided that they wanted to sit down and talk to them. They decided, oh, the little black boy ended up dead without his cell phone, without his friends, going and telling his parents, oh yeah, we got the cell phone. They got to go and track down the phone and find the phone. It looks like a racial thing to me, but hey, maybe we'll find out that it was.
It's a contradiction. They're not saying the same thing. One of them is telling the truth, one of them is not.
Discrepancies, conflicting accounts. This is now part of the Nolan Wells investigation. You're going to hear people ask whether someone is lying, which is very fair given the reporting. It's time to review the questions and the contradictions related to the case of Nolan Wells' death.
She said he was going back to the boat. They said he was staying behind for her. Both stories can't be true. And 2 weeks after Nolan Wells vanished on Horn Island, nobody investigating this case has been able to tell you which one is a lie. Her name is Katie. According to family attorney Ben Crump, she's told investigators that in her last conversation with Nolan, he said he was heading back to get on the boat with his friends. But the friends who were actually on that boat tell a different story entirely. They say Nolan told them he wanted to stay behind, specifically to keep talking to her. Same 5 minutes, same beach, 2 completely different endings. Before we get into what's actually been confirmed here, and what's just noise, I need 30 seconds of your time. This case has already been buried under one wave of misinformation, a viral photo that turned out to be from a completely different night, over a week before Nolan even went missing. And right now, there's a new wave spreading, claims about a confession, about grand jury testimony, none of which has actually happened. If you want a channel that slows down and corrects a record instead of chasing whatever's trending, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and drop a like right now. Nolan's mother has said her brain feels like mush right now, that she can't fully put into words how hard this has been, not just for her, but for his siblings too. Families like his deserve coverage that gets it right, even when the internet is racing in the wrong direction. Okay, let's get into what's real. Let's start with a correction, because it matters. There is no confession in this case. There is no grand jury testimony. As of right now, no grand jury has even convened. What actually happened is that Nolan's parents and Crump met with Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath on July 15th. The DA confirmed that once the Sheriff's Department finishes its investigation, the findings will be handed over to a grand jury. That's the entire announcement. And her office was specific about what that does and doesn't mean. Convening a grand jury is not a declaration of criminality. It's a standard procedure in that county for any unnatural or suspicious death. No exceptions. So if you've seen a headline suggesting someone already confessed or testified, that's not accurate. It's a title built for clicks, not a fact from any case file. So why does this week feel like something bigger happened? Because 2 real things landed at the same time and got mashed together online into something more dramatic than either fact actually is on its own. The grand jury confirmation is one thread. Katie stepping further into the story with an account that directly contradicts a friend group is the other. And that contradiction is where the real tension in this case is actually sitting right now. It's worth pausing on what that split really means, psychologically. This isn't a clean case of one side lying outright and the other telling the truth. It's more unsettling than that, because both people involved were, by every account, present and engaged in that exact interaction, and they walked away with opposite memories of how it ended. Memory under stress is unreliable even in ordinary situations. This was a chaotic, alcohol-involved, crowded beach day that nobody there knew was about to become the worst day of a family's life. But that doesn't mean investigators can just shrug and move on, because if one account is accurate and the other isn't, that tells you something concrete about where Nolan actually intended to go in his final hours. There's another layer to this that's easy to miss. Nolan's mother has said that in the very first chaotic hours after she realized her son wasn't accounted for, she was told, almost as an afterthought, that Katie herself was missing too, and that nobody in the group even seemed to know who Katie was. Someone connected to Katie later posted on Facebook, specifically to shut that rumor down and confirm she was fine. But sit with what that detail actually reveals. In the earliest hours of this case, the people closest to Nolan couldn't even agree on basic facts about who he'd last been with. That's not necessarily anyone lying. It might just be panic and confusion. But it's still a red flag, a separate one from any accusation of wrongdoing, because it shows how fragmented and unreliable the information was right from the start. Now here's where something other than memory finally enters the picture. Up until this point, literally everything in this case has come from testimony, recollection, statements filtered through grief, loyalty, or fear of public backlash. New GPS records obtained by CBS News from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources are the first piece of evidence that doesn't come from a person's memory at all. It comes from a satellite quietly logging a boat's location every few minutes, with no motive to protect anyone. According to that data, the boat left its dock at 9:56 in the morning and reached Horn Island at 11:14. It left the island again at 4:31 that afternoon. And here's the detail that matters most. That timestamp lines up almost exactly with a 911 call obtained separately by NBC News, in which the boat's operator can be heard telling a dispatcher, "We're at the west tip of Horn. Our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you please come?" About 30 minutes after that call, the boat left the island. The physical timeline holds up, but here's what that 911 call doesn't do, and it's just as important as what it does. The dispatcher directly asked the caller whether everyone on board is accounted for and in good health. The caller says yes. Everyone's fine. Nobody on that recorded call mentions Nolan by name, mentions that someone was staying behind, or raises any concern about a member of their group not being on the boat. That's not automatically suspicious. Plenty of people wouldn't think to bring up a friend who'd voluntarily chosen to stay on the island a little longer. But it's another small gap in a pattern, where the full picture that afternoon keeps having holes in exactly the places where Nolan's whereabouts should have been clearest. From there, the GPS shows the boat returning to its original dock, then moving into Fort Bayou around 5:52 that evening, back to the dock by 6:06, then to a different boat launch at 7:19 p.m., where records suggest it was towed overland, likely by trailer, back to the home of the boat's owners in Biloxi. On the surface, that's just a boat heading home after a rough day on the water. But a crime analyst reviewing the timeline for News Nation made a point worth repeating almost exactly as he said it. The value of this data isn't proving anyone guilty. It's that every account any of these friends gave to investigators or to Nolan's family before this GPS data became public can now be checked against a fixed, unbiased record. If someone's personal version of that day doesn't match what the boat was actually doing at that hour, that's a real credibility problem. Not proof of wrongdoing, but proof that somewhere, someone's memory or someone's honesty has a demonstrated gap. That's the real shift this week represents. For the first 2 weeks of this case, everything was he said, she said, friend said, family said. Now, for the first time, there's a fixed scoreboard that doesn't care about anyone's feelings, loyalties, or fear of public backlash. And multiple accounts are going to be measured against it as the Sheriff's Department finishes its work. Meanwhile, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office itself has gone almost completely silent to outside media. NPR reported this week that several outlets, including their own newsroom, made repeated requests for comment and received nothing back. The one recent public statement from Sheriff Ledbetter was about Pace, not findings, saying his department won't be rushed by an arbitrary deadline or by online pressure, and that a thorough investigation simply takes the time it takes. Whether you read that as responsible restraint or frustrating stonewalling probably depends on how much patience you personally have left for this case, and honestly, that's a fair thing to admit either way. And then there's the piece everyone is still waiting on, the one that could reframe everything else. The independent autopsy the family commissioned in Washington, D.C. was originally expected on July 10th. Crump said it was delayed due to complications transporting Nolan's body. As of the most recent reporting, those results still haven't been released. The state's own autopsy is in a similar holding pattern, waiting on toxicology results that officials say can realistically take 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes longer. There's one concrete, productive development that came out of that July 15th meeting with the DA. Crump announced that the family's independent phone investigators and law enforcement's own experts have agreed to a mutual inspection of Nolan's phone, both sides examining the same device at the same time, rather than one side's findings simply being relayed through press conferences and disputed after the fact by the other. Attorney Eric Hertz, who's helping lead the family's investigative team, made a point about that decision worth repeating almost exactly as he said it. He said that whenever a case this big gets in the news, people try to build a narrative around it, whether that's coming from law enforcement, from anonymous callers, or from anyone else with a motivation of their own, and that the actual job now is to cut through that noise with an investigation that isn't beholden to any one side's version of events. That's a useful way to think about where this case actually stands right now. 2 weeks in, we have a boat's movements confirmed by satellite. We have a 911 call with an exact timestamp. We have a named young woman whose account directly contradicts the friend group's story. We have a sheriff's department that's gone quiet publicly while claiming diligence privately. And we still, after all of it, do not have a cause of death. So here's what's actually worth sitting with. If Katie's account and the friend's account can't both be true, what does it tell you? Psychologically, that neither side has budged after 2 weeks of public pressure. Is that conviction because they genuinely know what they saw, or is it the kind of stubbornness that sets in once a story's already been told publicly enough times that walking it back starts to feel impossible, whether it was accurate to begin with or not? And when a family finally gets access to hard, unbiased data like GPS logs, does it usually resolve a case faster, or does it just hand both sides new ammunition to interpret however they'd already decided to believe? I want your honest read on this one, not a verdict, because nobody outside the actual investigation has enough to deliver one yet. But a real theory, built on what's actually been confirmed rather than what's gone viral. Do you think the friend's account is holding up under this new data, or do you think Katie's version is the one that's going to matter most once the GPS and the phone data are fully cross-checked? Put it in the comments. And if this case moves again before you're done reading this, we'll be back with it. If you want more cases broken down through psychology and behavior instead of headlines and speculation, subscribe to Psychology of Crime, and we'll keep following this one until there's an actual answer.